Okay, good evening, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Lagniappe Leadership Discussion number 2. This is the purpose of this event is to bring together leaders across multiple environments to talk about leadership. So it's not just a clever name. Lagniappe means a little something extra. And boy, do we have a little something extra today because you get 2 for the price of 1. That's right. Bringing you 2 Barnshaws for the price of 1 this evening. We are fortunate to have Chief Master Sergeant Jason J.B. Barnshaw and his bride, Senior Master Sergeant Sharry Barnshaw, join us this evening to discuss leadership. We're bringing in 2 leaders who have served our nation for a little bit, and so we're fortunate to have these 2 join us. I do have to say the caveats at the beginning: the opinions and perspectives given this evening do not represent the official position of the United States Air Force nor the Department of Defense. With that out of the way, I'd like to thank our sponsors for today's event, which is All Things Awesome and hair care products that JB's probably got a bunch of. And so, I like to kick it off with a little bit of, bios. And so, true to form, I asked the participants, hey, send me a bio. And Sharry did this one up, and you can tell because there's a lot of Sharryisms in there. But typical, JB came out first, and she highlighted he's been serving our nation for just a little bit. He's currently a group senior enlisted leader at Eglin. I was fortunate to work for him in my last assignments, and he's done just a little bit of deployments, 12 of them. And then on top of that, he actually was a commandant of Airman Leadership School for us in the United States Air Force. And then, not to be outdone, as they would say, the better half of the Barnshaw duo. Sharry has been in the Air Force for just over 18 years. She wrapped up 5 full years as a first sergeant. And when you serve for 5 years as a first sergeant, they give you 3 bases. And she's led the First Sergeant's Council at 2 of those bases. And so she recently took off her diamond, which I know is a big change for her after being called shirt for so long. And is currently a senior enlisted leader at the 33rd Fighter Wing staff agencies there at Eglin. So thanks for coming in from Florida, JB and Sharry. And so with that as a brief overview, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourselves that isn't covered in the write-up?
Okay. Of course, it's me. She lets me go first so she can outdo me all the time. Now you kind of hit the nail on the head. I think a lot of what you see in these bios is official, right? But we try to tie in what really means the most to us, and that's family. Mm-hmm. We joke all the time that we have 4 kids. We really only like one of them, depending on what day it is dependent on which one we actually like. But they keep us plenty busy. For us, it's really just about maximizing our time. We understand what our nation calls us to do, but when we unplug, and a lot of what we do, it revolves around family. Rather not taking the kids to sports and all these other events that they're participating in. We just dropped our 2 oldest boys off at college. Both of them play lacrosse, so we're just proud. A lot of what we do in leadership will be judged with how we lead this household. And so far, knock on wood, we've been pretty successful. Jory's still out on how these kids do in college, though.
Do you want me to add more to that?
Please, I know you have.
So I know you said we have 4, but I like to say I have 4 kids and a man-child. And my life for the last 10 plus years have been revolved around family first and then the military. But Jason and I, we do a lot of things outside of work that we're passionate about. I know Jason does a lot of podcasting and leadership stuff. And, I'm in the background. I like to say he's the motivator, I'm the educator. I love to read and teach and educate folks and stuff. And so we have our ambitions outside of the military. And it just happened to work out for us that we, our personal goals have aligned to what the Air Force is looking for. And it's made our careers and our lives just so much better because we've been able to blend military and family.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, it's true to form. Every time we have a conversation, the humor comes out between you 2. And it's always a privilege to be in your presence, even though virtually a couple of states away. So, the theme of tonight's Lagniappe Leadership Discussion is leading as a family. And so let's dive straight into that. So, we'll start with Sharry first. Sharry, what do you see as your biggest challenge leading in the community, leading in the Air Force when you're also married to another leader within your organization?
I wouldn't say, I can't say for others. Jason and I have taken a different approach when it comes to leading with the family and leading in the military. We are very supportive of each other. And so not one career is more important than the other. We constantly we like to strategize within our family on who's going to take what, who's focusing where. And so as the years have gone by, yes, there has been challenges with, we're both going TDY, who's going to watch the kids and stuff like that. But we have been interactive with bringing our kids into, part of the military and being respectful and responsible to each other in terms of our careers and leading our family. So we face challenges here and there, but we both understand and know that we both serve in our own right. And so we support each other in that regard, and we've never put anyone's careers above the other person. And so if I needed to be present at work, he was supportive at home. And if he needed to be present at work, I was supportive at home. And it's kind of worked in that regard for us. Did you have anything to add there?
He didn't ask me, he asked you. That was your question.
Well, we are called Team Barnshaws, so.
You're a rock star, you rock that question.
This is my biggest challenge, sir, when it comes to leading.
Yeah, well, as you stated, there's a man-child perspective there. But JB, yeah, I mean, true to form. So Sharry articulated almost the sense of how do you prioritize dueling careers? You guys are both communicators in the world's greatest Air Force, right? And you guys have made some trade-offs where, JB, you stepped aside and you went and led Airman Leadership School. Sharry added a diamond to her stripe, so she promoted within as a first sergeant. And so, how have you been able to deconflict the challenge of, no one's career takes precedence?
That has been a challenge, and it's been a challenge since we've kind of taken this path and climbed the proverbial ladder together. One of our mentors pulled us aside many, many, many years ago and sat us down and said, sooner or later, you are going to have to make a decision. Mm-hmm. And she went on to say, you're going to have to make a decision between family and career, because there is a sacrifice. Everything that we do has to be done as a unit. Like neither one of us works in a silo. So, I mean, it doesn't matter if we're looking at assignments, if we're looking at, what the next step is. I mean, sir, you kind of mentioned it a little bit. So I was stifling her career in cyber. So we made the conscious decision for me to step out and take advantage of an awesome opportunity to be an Airman Leadership School Commandant. Well, towards the tail end of my tour there, I was coming back to the career field. It was a perfect opportunity for her to step out. So we strategized that way neither one of us were stepping on each other's toes, but still ultimately supportive of one another. But the higher we have gone, the more challenging it has become. We're lucky enough now to be on an installation that has multiple wings. So I can work in my organization and Sharry can work in her organization. There's no conflict of interests. We probably would never be stationed at a small base again, just simply because of that dynamic and just the way the Air Force and the military looks at it. So there has been some trade-offs. There has been some very hard family decisions, but they've been just that. They've been family decisions.
So two things to add to that. The first thing is what's important to us is we goal set. So we're very good at goal setting. We sit down and look at, what our goals are for the family within the first, the next year, the next 5 years, the next 10 years. And then we look at each other. What are our goals internally, that we would like to achieve? And then how can we support that? So Jason and I, we sit down once a week and we actually go through what are we prioritizing this week? What are you handling? What am I handling? And what kind of challenges do you think that we're going to face? We do this every Sunday and we go over that for the week. So we deconflict schedules. We carve out time for each other. We carve out time for the children. It's a balance, juggle is a juggling act, not a balance, it's a juggling act. But if we are not both contributing, then it's not going to work. The other part to that is Jason and I did work together for a year as a married couple, and it was the hardest year we have ever had in our marriage. Because Jason is, type A, I'm type A. And so I'm like, no, you need to do it this way. And he's like, no. And then we take those problems home, and we learned really quickly that we couldn't do that. So what we started doing is we check our problems at the door, or we will strategize and talk about them together. So if I had a problem that I was struggling with at work, I know some people say, don't bring it home, but actually Jason is my biggest confidant. He is the person I, release. Sometimes I don't agree with him. And sometimes I'm like, you know what? Some of that's good. Some of it I don't like. I'll take the pieces I do like. But we have always strategized and goal set together. And I think that's been the most important piece for us in terms of our careers and leading our family as well.
Yeah, right. So you, first off, the Sunday thing is amazing. I'll have to see if I can work that in with my family. Although we have a couple more variables, obviously. So goal setting is pretty imperative. So you two are senior leaders right now within the Air Force. The Air Force throws out statistics. Sharry, you're at a rank that only 2%, 2 out of every 100 airmen that go through Lackland achieve, and JV, you're at that one. And I think we all know that Sharry will wear that stripe one day of her own accord. And so, you guys are in this position where people are looking at you, right, on the regular, and they're seeing, success. They're seeing what right looks like, if you will, to use a parlance that sometimes gets overused. And so you guys you're exuding success, but how do you articulate where there was a challenge? Like, how do you articulate where you had to be willing to accept a risk or make a tough choice? And how do you convey that to those that you're fortunate to mentor?
It boils down to transparency. There is not much, and almost to a fault. I am completely transparent with my folks, as I know Sharry is with hers, and I will talk through struggles or decisions I'm facing, or life decisions that we're trying to, and I will be very open, candid, and transparent with those under my charge about what I'm going through, because I don't want them to see all the sunshine and rainbows. This isn't always, bells and whistles. Like, there are some tough decisions that we have to make as a family. And again, almost to a fault, right? There are some times where maybe I overshare. I don't know. I personally feel that way, but I want them to see the challenges that are faced, because I don't want them to think, I don't want their expectations to be grander than what the reality really is. And the reality is yeah, there are some sacrifices. There are some challenges. We came down here, trust me, there are worse places to be than Eglin on the Panhandle. Like, this place is beautiful, but this was also the second time over the past 3 years that we had to move one of our children right before his senior year. Like, that is tough. And so I share these experiences with those under my charge. How do you?
So I would agree with that. And I'll give you a perfect example. So transparency, I believe in strength and vulnerability. And through vulnerability, you have to be able to share your experiences. So a big challenge Jason and I had to sacrifice and or take a risk was when I first got selected to be a first sergeant. He still had a year and a half on his contract as an ALS commandant on his time there. And we had 3 choices to make. Either IPCS, because I was a PCS en route since I had already been at Dover for 6 years at that point. Either IPCS and wait for him to follow me, and then PCS our family again, or he takes his diamond off or his cookie off early and doesn't get credit for it, or I sacrifice and stay there for another year and a half. And I had already been at that base for 6 years. And to be quite honest, I didn't want to stay there because I knew too many people, and I knew that airmen would shy away from me because they didn't want me to see them in a different light. And I saw that during my shadowing time, where I'd go into, shadow a first sergeant, and an airman come in the room and they're like, "Ooh, why is Sergeant Barnshaw here?" But I didn't want to take away that time that he had as an ALS commandant, because I knew that he absolutely loved to be in a commandant. And so I sacrificed and I stayed another year and a half. And they put me in a unit where I didn't really know a whole lot of people. So that was a good thing. But I shared that vulnerability with my command chief, and had I not shared that with her, Jason and I would have been in a very hard predicament. But because I shared that with her, she was able to reach out to certain, people in training command and work with us to get me to stay at Dover so that Jason didn't sacrifice and I didn't have to sacrifice and we didn't have to move our family a couple of times. I share those stories with people, and we share the reality that yes, Jason and I have had successful careers, but at the same time, there's been points where we really had to decide whether this was a good decision for the family first and then us second. And when you can do that, yes, sometimes you'll make some sacrifices, but your family, your life, your spouse, your marriage, your relationship will be so much better.
Yeah, that's good. And I do want to highlight for everybody that's participating, if you have a question you want to ask the Barnshaws, please type it in and I'll voice it to them. So you guys, as I said, the topic is leading as a family, and you articulated that you're fortunate to have four amazing humans, that are off on their own, and some are playing lacrosse and accomplishing great things. But so you guys have set an example as parents, right? And you've had some trials and tribulations through that time, but as JB articulated, we're moving yet another one of our blessings right before their senior year, right? So you start to establish something with your kids. How do you have that conversation with them where, Sharry, you said family first and then us second, but it's sometimes that might not be felt the same way by the family members. So how does that conversation play out?
It's a perfect example, the one we just took, right? The one we took to move here. I got hired on for a SIP position, so it was an interview process position. Before even jumping down onto this interview, we talked to the kids and said, hey, here's the deal. We may have an opportunity to move to Florida.
Mm-hmm.
I still have to be interviewed, but I want to know going into this interview how I need to talk to the interviewer, meaning that if my family wasn't on board, I needed to be able to say that.
Mm-hmm.
Are you okay with moving? Is this okay? Is this something that you think that we can handle as a family? Is this something that you would be willing to entertain? And, we're talking to kids, and we deem them kids, but at the time, one was 17 and the other one was 19 as far as the boys are concerned, right? So they're a little older, they're a little bit more mature.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds funny coming from a parent, but we got their blessing.
Mm-hmm.
The girls, like they're ecstatic, they'll go anywhere, right? You tell them Florida beach, they're like, yeah, let's go. But especially our younger son, the one that was going to be a senior, I had to make sure it was okay with him.
Mm-hmm.
And then Sharry talked to him and made, kind of, she's much more articulate with me than me, especially with the kids. But once we got their blessings, we felt comfortable going into the process and ultimately understanding that we would end up exactly where we're supposed to be. So just as we're transparent with our airmen and our guardians,
Mm-hmm.
we are really transparent with the kids. We just had this conversation with the kids about a potential opportunity for me. And putting all my chips in the center of the table as far as maybe looking at command chief and all this other stuff. And like, hey, what do y'all think?
Mm-hmm.
This is a family decision. And when we say family, it doesn't just mean Sharry and I.
Oh, no, I agree. I think the biggest thing to kind of take away from that is that we've always included the kids in the decision. And when they feel included, they feel like they have, a part of that decision. But I will say the kids have always been very supportive of us. They're always like, take it, like, don't worry about us, take it. And I think that's kind of made the decision better. But because we've always included them, and it's only gotten hard after probably about 2016. Once that started happening, we started including them more and more in the decision. They're older and stuff, but my kids, and I can't account for everyone else's children, they understand the military. We have involved them in the military, so they understand a little bit more. And so they know the sacrifices and the risks and all that. And we break it down for them to help them have a better informed decision.
Okay, that's good. And, we'll dig into that here in a little bit. We got a question from Emily. Emily says, so have you ever had to navigate a situation where you're both up for the same award or recognition? And if so, how do you handle that internal disappointment of JB not getting, for not being selected while also celebrating
Oh,
your
that's such a good
partner's success?
That is a good question. So I will give you a peek behind the Barnshaw strategy curtain. When I say we strategize, we strategize. So if Sharry needs to be on, she needs to be on, which means I need to take a step back.
Mhm.
We have never competed for the same category. We have never competed for the set. Like we just haven't. Have we?
Well, you're an old man, so I just came in the ranks with you for senior NCO. So I was an NCO, you were a senior NCO. But go ahead. I'm just being fair here.
I was a senior and you were a master. So why, Emily, don't listen to that. Don't, no, ha in the chat, Emily.
Yeah,
No.
but I was a first sergeant when you became a senior, which and I cannot compete for the same award. So
That's true.
yeah,
But what I was stating was facts, though. We do strategize and take
that's true.
take on and off,
Yeah.
if you will. Like, and it's not that I'm taking a back seat or anything like that, but I know like if she's rocking it and just doing everything she needs to do, and you just take a step back and you're just like, man, you know what? Okay, you go do this. I'll take it. And
Mhm.
Sharry alluded to it earlier. I'll take care of the household. You, if you need to go and do whatever you need to do. And we kind of almost trade it off.
Yeah. So, if, for example, if I, want to be top 3, whatever, executive council, Jason will not run for something because he knows that an executive council is going to take, a lot of work from me, and I need him to pick up where I can't, and vice versa. So, we have never competed because we are on and off every other year, for lack of better words, right? So, if he's on, I'm off. If I'm on, he's off, and vice versa. That way, there's no imbalance from home and work and such.
Okay, that's good. And of course, appreciate the candor and transparency as always.
They call me,
And yes.
I'm like, man, apparently I'm the old man here. Thanks.
Well, what do you mean apparently? Like it's in the rank. Okay, so what goes after senior? So we talked earlier about the kids get a say, right? And that the boys are a little bit more tenured, and they've done some schoolwork on the trying to be on the same lacrosse team. You got the girls, right? And so you said the girls are all in, but how do you handle that point when they're not? How do you reconcile? Because maybe it's worked out for y'all, but you're fortunate. You might be mentoring that joint spouse couple or the single parent, and he or she might be at this point where like, I could make that next achievement, but my daughter, my son, whatever, it's time to go. So how do you have that conversation when in all sense it's worked out for you guys?
We're doing it now, right? I've done it for the past couple years. We've talked about it. I will never shy somebody away from, all right, perfect story. I was a young tech sergeant at the time, and I went to a retirement ceremony. And in that retirement ceremony, I watched the retiree spend 80% of his speech apologizing to the front row, apologizing for not being there, missing all of this other stuff, missing this, missing that. And the light bulb went off, and I said, I will never apologize to the front row. Right? I don't want to make decisions in my career to the point where at my retirement ceremony, I have to apologize to the front row. With that being said, the mindset has always been control over career. We talk about this all the time, and I think this is one of the things where our words don't match our actions. Your family, whether or not it's significant others, kids, extended family, doesn't matter. They were there before the military, and they will be there afterwards. It doesn't matter to me what your bank account looks like, how many stripes you have on your chest, how many stars you have. If your family members don't know who you are, you've lost the game. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's having those candid conversations with, look, some of life's best decisions are closed doors and opportunities not taken. Mm-hmm. Because in the long run, a family decision that you make with your heart, honestly, in my opinion, will never be wrong.
Mm-hmm. So if I'm being honest, and I'm going to share this with you, or with them, Jason has almost retired several times. Because if he knew, especially with chiefs, they don't have as much control in their assignments and when they get non-balled or out of cycle hire or whatever the case is. But there's been, I'd say, probably 3 points where when he became a senior and got selected for chief, if the base did not work out for the family, meaning if it wasn't, in a place where they can have lacrosse, because like Central Georgia didn't have lacrosse. If it didn't work out for the family, then he was going to retire. So that we can say, because he was the driving force for that assignment. But that's a decision he made. We've always been family first, military second. Because at the end of the day, when this military, when we hang up this uniform, our family is what we have left. And so there's been a few times where he, said, if the assignment does not work for the family, then I will retire and I will be content with the service that I have provided for the last 20, 22, 24 years.
And I think that hits the nail on the head. And I think that's the mindset that we really try to share with others, is that your rank does not determine your value. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter to me if you retire as a tech sergeant, a major, a senior. It doesn't matter. Like, what I wear on my chest does not determine my value. Mm-hmm. So if I had to make a family first decision and hang my uniform up, which would have been hard to do, I would have walked out with my head held high, mm-hmm. knowing that I gave everything I could. Sharry gave everything she could, and it's just that's the way the cards were dealt to us, and if the Air Force is in good hands, y'all will fly, fight, and win in my honor, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm okay with that. Mm-hmm. We talk about it a lot, respect and regret. Like, I don't want to make a decision that I'm going to end up regretting. But regardless of how it pans out, I'm going to walk out with my head held high, respecting the effort that I put in for our airmen, our Air Force, and our country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I appreciate that. And, thank goodness the decision cycles worked out. Haven't had the privilege of spending time with you two professionally. So, the next question, so we're talking about leading as a family, during this time as leading a family, you're discussing how's your career go forward while you have, you're entrusted with these 4 people that you're going to release into the world with reckless abandon, especially the boys. And so, the next question I have for you is, right, so eventually you come home, you're in the house, and now you're going to lead as a family, right? And as Sharry articulated earlier, you're both type A. And now you're in your own 4 walls, and somebody's lead and somebody might not be lead. And so how does that work? Because the amount of stripes, the amount of gables on the house don't matter when it's mom and dad time. So how do you guys lead in that environment?
I don't know if you picked that up, but she literally just whispered, "I got this one." That's all. That answers the question right there. Like,
so it's funny because when my husband made chief, somebody was like, "Oh, it's going to be awesome that you have a chief in the house." And said, "There's always been a chief."
True statement.
So Jason, this is how our structure works. Jason is the president of the company. I'm the CEO, the COO, the CFO, and all of the above. So he's the face of the company. I make sure everything runs. You have anything to add?
She does a great job allowing me to believe that I'm leading. She really does. No, I think what we do a lot of the times, if I were to answer this question seriously, we lean on each other's strengths. And I think even though we're both kind of, A-type personalities, and we're very kind of outgoing and aggressive at times, i.e. her.
Only with you.
We understand where our strengths lie and where they don't. Mm-hmm. And I think at that point in time, the leading within these 4 walls of the Barnshaw household, it ebbs and flows. Certain things she will say, "Hey, this is kind of in your court, right? What do you think?" And there will be times where I say, "Hey, this is in your court. What do you think?" Mm-hmm. Right? So it's the self-awareness of not only understanding who we are as leaders, but who we are as people. And the reason we got married is because we are kind of 2 peas in a pod. But, to use the cliche, like, she completes me, right? She's everything I'm not, right? And vice versa. So we have to ebb and flow like that. And knowing that the decisions that we make are family-based, they're not selfish in nature. So it's very easy for me to sit back and be like, all right, this is in her wheelhouse, her expertise. She's going to make the decision best for the family.
Mhm.
Yeah, she had you at hello, or you had
Yep.
hair
Yeah,
gel or
hello.
something. Hair gel, I think, was not hello. So one of the things we talk about in the military is, who's your wingman, using Air Force parlance, since we're both all three of us are airmen. But we talk about who's your wingman, the person you spend the most time with day to day. She or he is going to know when you're up, when you're down, right? So you two are best friends, clearly. And so how do you handle that? Sharry, how do you handle JB being on this upward trajectory within his own career, and then being willing to take a knee, if you will, to take care of the family? But obviously that's going to weigh on him a little bit, and because he wears tiny shirts, you can tell. So like, how do you take care of your spouse when you know that they're struggling, right? And you've been you were a first sergeant for 5 years, and you and I talked about care for the caregiver, right? And same thing with JB as a squadron SEL, now a group SEL. So how do you guys do care for the caregiver, for each other, when you guys both know your strengths and your weaknesses, and you can probably read the body language better than anybody else you come in contact with?
Okay, this one. People know us as well. We banter every day. So, but we rarely argue. So Jason wakes up, he's a grubby person. I'm it's in the morning, wake up. At nighttime, I'm like, I'm dead. And he's like, I'm ready to be productive. Um, and so I learned a long time ago, I'm the type of person, I'm a fixer, right? I want to fix everything. I was the first sergeant, I want to fix. So if people are upset, if they're down, if they're stressed or whatever, I want to fix the problem. But I learned a long time ago, especially with this dog when he bites, that sometimes you just got to let people be. And so when he is ready to talk, we talk. When he needs me to do, I do, and vice versa. And I just learned to get out of his way. When he needs me, he will ask for that. And I think that's how we kind of, do you have anything to add to that? I think that's how we kind of work well together.
That's how you work. I don't, I can't, like, this is hard for me. Because we both serve in our own right, I understand my position, I understand hers. I have a very, very, very hard time being a leader and not a husband. I have a very hard time differentiating the two, because I always want to side with husband. So I do not like it when she's in her downs. I don't like, and it's kind of like her. I want to fix everything, right? But I have a hard time reminding myself of, hey, does she need me to help, or does she need me to listen, right? Hey, like, it's one, because I want to dive right in and say, okay, I don't like you like this. Like, I don't like you being down or upset or mad. So as a husband, like, my wife's upset, let's fix this. To where sometimes I think for me, what I probably need to do is take a step back and be like, okay, kind of like taking her approach, take a step back, let her be, and then maybe handling it a little bit more that way. But I'm very protective of Sharry, and I don't like her being upset. And this doesn't have to be about somebody else, it could be about anything. So I have a hard time differentiating the two. I will always side with the husband aspect first, almost to a fault sometimes, because maybe she does just need me to step back, or maybe she's coming to me for advice and not for me to get so ingrained with how she's feeling. And it's hard for me to differentiate the two.
Now, you asked the question about how do I feel about him being a leader at work and stepping down. I will be honest with you, Jason's strong suit is not managing a household. And I think he makes decisions all day that I don't think he wants to make the decisions when he comes home. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't have an issue making decisions, or making sure the kids are cleaning or doing their homework. And I don't have an issue with that. I've been raising kids my whole life. My mother passed away when I was young. I raised my three younger siblings. And then I came in the military, and I've been involved since. So I have no issues taking care of that aspect. But like I said, he makes decisions all day and I do the same, but it doesn't, like for me, it bothers me. A dirty house bothers me. Kids not doing what they need to bothers me. And Jason's like, oh, they're kids. They're good. So he's like, you're better at this. You're better at the, home care and stuff. And I don't have an issue as long as when I ask for help, he provides it. And when I need him to step in, because sometimes kids listen more to daddy than they do mommy, even though I'm more scary than he is, he'll step in and support me there. But so that's that. To answer that question, I have no issues him stepping down at home because it allows me to run my house the way I want it to be ran.
Way to see the battle space. That's solid.
Although he
Yeah.
tries to chief me sometimes, and I don't think it works that well.
It doesn't work well for me.
Yeah, she probably gives you that finger or the look. I've seen the look a couple times. I've been present for that.
Any mistake I make at work, I pay for double when we get home. So I've learned my lesson a long time ago.
You are welcome. Yeah, so you guys talked through the teamwork. Right? So leading at home is teamwork and understanding who can step in when dad can use the Batman voice, as my kids would say, and doing that. So what about let's flip back to the military side, right? And so what about when you have that airman that wants, to get a perspective from both, right? I'll just use it to our personal experience together at Robbins Air Force, right? Presumably there were personnel that knew of both of you and probably wanted to leverage that perspective. So how do you guys deal with the possibility of maybe dueling guidance and mentorship that might not be identical?
So we've actually experienced this a couple times. And we go in and doesn't matter if I'm mentoring one-on-one or if we're mentoring as a team, right? So you'd be well, maybe not be surprised, but we get asked to mentor as a team more often than probably people think. I think the one thing going into it is just being open, saying, hey, we have different perspectives. We're giving you a perspective, so maybe you can piece them both together and come up with the best decision for yourself. Because I think a lot of the times, I don't think there's anything we've ever truly black and white disagreed on, right? A lot of what we are given is experiences or perspectives, or I've seen this and she's seen that. So we may differ in the path that we take, but most of our destinations are pretty much the same. So if somebody's coming to us with a let's just say a problem set or a target that they want to improve, that's still the end goal. And we're still going to get you there. We may just take two different paths to get there. So we'll share our paths, and then hopefully the person from there can take the best path that fits who they are as an individual.
So I will say, Jason and I, we have a lot of very similar mindset when it comes to career, family, taking care of people. The one thing I will say that we do very well, and maybe it's the reason why we don't clash in guidance and advice, is we draw in our mentorship, we draw that from experience, right? So if I have not experienced something, I don't feel comfortable advising someone in that area. And so there's been times where I'll say, hey, my husband, he's experienced this before. Do you mind kicking you over to that, to him, so he can give you better advice or mentorship in this area? There's times Jason didn't even know it was scheduled to mentor somebody, and I'm like, hey. Just so you know, I called your exec. She's going to be, put somebody on your calendar. But if it's not an area where I feel that I've experienced enough to provide someone true advice and mentorship, I will kick them over to Jason, or even if it wasn't Jason, someone else that Jason and I consider part of our, board of advisors that we like to call it, because we're not all, created equal, and we have not all experienced the same things. And I can't truly give you the best advice better than the next person who's experienced it just a little bit more than I have. So we have done really well in, instead of competing in strategy, or not strategy, but advice or mentorship, kicking someone over to the next person so they can get better advice in that area.
I will say the one thing that I believe we do probably very well is, like, we don't disagree in front of company. So even if there were, and there will be some times, and as Sherry's talking, I'm like, yeah, there's 2 or 3 times where we actually did disagree, but never in front of other people. Like we'll come back and I'll be like, I don't know about that, or she'll be like, I don't know about that, right? And then we just have an open dialogue between us. Yeah, I think Sherry hit the nail on the head. I've done this more times than I can count, especially with female airmen, right? I can mention you on a lot of things, but what I can't mention you on is what it's like to be a female in the military. That is an experience I will never have. I can try my best, but I'll always come up short. And there are some phenomenal female leaders out there that I can kind of guide you to that can give you that advice. Overarching things, got you. What it's like to be a female or a single mother or having kids from a mother's perspective. I don't have that experience, and anything I say would be ignorant compared to somebody that has lived that life. So I've probably punted more than my fair share to Sherry.
So I do want to clarify something he said. This is going back to our background. So he said single parent. So Jason and I don't have any children together. I have a child from a previous marriage, and he has 3 from a previous marriage. And so that's another challenge that we've experienced within our family is we have a blended family, and to keep all the 4 kids together and stuff like that. So when he says single parent, there was a time in my career where I was a single parent for 3 or 4 years before him and I started dating.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. So we actually got a couple questions flowing in real quick, so we'll hit that. So the first one comes from Rob. He says, what has been the challenge that either of you has experienced in your career that may have led you to call each other to walk through, and what was the best way to handle that? And you can't blame, like horrible group members.
Okay.
That was awful.
So, hey, Nicole, I'll answer your question. That's Nicole Robinson. So I had a great, to answer your question, I had a staff sergeant came to me. He had received Article 15 in his career and wanted to know how to recover from that. And so I've never received an Article 15, but Chief Barnshaw has. And so I kicked that staff sergeant over to Barnshaw because he was a, young staff sergeant that unfortunately found himself in a situation he shouldn't have been in and received an Article 15. And today he stands before you as a Chief Master Sergeant in the United States Air Force. And so for me, I felt the best way to do that or to advise him is to kick him over to Jason so that he could get better mentorship on how to recover.
Yeah, I think for me, it would be, I can't think of a specific instance, so I apologize for that. But I know for me, I'm a little bit scatterbrained at times. I'm super emotional. Emotions go up, logic goes down type of deal. So if I'm struggling with Sherry is a very Jedi mind trick voodoo type person, man. She understands EQ and how to read people. So if I'm feeling overwhelmed in a situation, like my brain's going a million miles an hour, I will actually call her for advice because I'm being challenged. I'll call her for advice, and she will, because she knows me so well, she will literally back me up to square one. And then, hey, what about this? What about this? What about this? Right. So she has the unique ability with me to slow me down so I can make more logical, rational, fact-based decisions, especially when I'm dealing with somebody where it's my head's all over the place and I'm getting kind of stuck in the analysis paralysis mode, and I need help slowing down. Yeah. She is my pacer, if you will.
Nicole, I think I answered your question wrong there. So I will tell you this, I've had issues with chiefs before. And so talking about a challenge. So when I do run into any kind of issues with chiefs, I reach out to Chief Barnshaw to get a chief's perspective, because maybe I'm the one that's not seeing it the right way. So I reach out to him, and I have a few other friends. Kathleen Nisley is on here as well. But I reach out to him and say, hey, I need a vector check. Am I wrong here? Am I off base? Do I need to approach this differently? And he gives me that different perspective that, had I approached it a little differently, or not gotten his advice, it probably would have put me in a different situation.
Yeah, thanks for that. And, thanks for the question, Nicole. I assumed by Rob that you're a guy, so forgive me on that. And of course, always referencing Chief K2 is a good sounding board. I think we can all attest to that. He's one in a million. But all right, so the next question comes from Natalie. What is something you've learned? All right, so this is a bookend question, so you got to go back in time. So what is something that you learned about each other in your first year of marriage? You know, the amount of hair care products one uses. And then what about something you've learned in your most recent year of marriage? That you,
Mm. So I learned in our first year of marriage that Sherry does not know how to use toothpaste because she's a crumpler and not a roller. And this caused many of arguments because I do not like crumpled toothpaste containers. So she had to go through upgrade training on that. We got her signed off. She's good now. No, I think what I learned about Sherry during the first year. So let's handle first year, last year.
Okay.
Good. All right. First year, I never realized how ambitious she was. And it was super, and I don't mean just like I'm promotion ambitious. I just mean life ambitious. Like her motor never stops. And I think in our first year of marriage, it was kind of like I looked at her like, man, you got to gear down, Turbo. Like again, as you alluded to, I'm a little old. Like we can't go ripping and running everywhere. We can't go conquer the world. We can't boil the ocean. Let's slow down a bit. But she is just go, 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 go. And what I've realized, because I am a tad older, is that helps keep me young, right? But I learned very quickly that her motor is always 180, to where mine idles at like 35.
Well, I'll give you a funny one. I learned very quickly in our first year that Jason is the only OCD person on the face of the earth that doesn't clean. So he is very neat, but he doesn't dust, he doesn't sweep, he doesn't mop. But if you open up his drawers, everything is specifically placed in a certain way. His closet is color-coded and styled the right way. And then you look at my closet, it's like, just throw it in there. But on a serious note, for me, one thing I learned is Jason, and we all know this now, but back then he didn't have the opportunity as much as he does now. Jason is really good at speaking. I think that's how he got me. But he's really good with articulating himself. And so one thing we did a lot and still do a lot is be able to talk through, our problems. And, he not only listens very well, but he listens to receive, and he talks very well in articulating his strengths, weaknesses, and things of that nature. And so I think that's kind of helped us throughout our marriage. But I learned that first year.
Last year. She always gives me a hard time about, so I am OCD. What I like to call it is everything has a place, put it back. But I am very structured. And what I've learned over this last year is that me being structured has helped the household to where I never knew how structured she was until I honestly kind of ran into some lows and I became unstructured, and she struggled with that. Right. So I've learned how structured she is in just the way we do business, the battle rhythm of our lives, how we get after things. And it's not that she wasn't structured before. It was just that I was so structured that it kind of encompassed everything. And how successful she was in that environment, because that was her mold. I never thought that was her mold until she has been like, hey, like we need to get structured. We need to get this. So I'm like, oh man, that's another thing we kind of have in common, is that we are very kind of structured. Like we work well on a rhythm, and all those types of things. So yeah, I learned that recently because I've been hitting kind of a lull with just a lot of stuff going on in life. And I didn't know that it was going to have the impact that it has.
So this is going to kind of sound a little weird, but one thing I learned this last year of marriage is how much of a team player Jason really is. So you see his podcast, he's by himself. You see his pictures on Facebook and LinkedIn and all that, he's by himself. But in the background, he's like, I need your help. What do you think? What do you think about this picture? What do you think about this video? I'm like, it's your stuff, baby. Just put it up. He's like, no, but I need your input. And he wants to involve me in that. And, we've always done things together as a team, but I didn't realize how much he wanted me to be a part of everything that he has going on when it comes to, his podcast and his YouTube, his career and his decision to retire and all that kind of stuff. So I learned that he likes to be a team player in his last year.
Yeah, that was awesome. And Thanks for that question, Natalie. Okay, so let's get into some quicker rapid fire questions. So we'll go to Sherry first. Sherry, what is the biggest weakness or difficulty you have in leading as a
And say that again, sir, the last part.
what is the biggest weakness or difficulty you have leading as a family?
I have trust issues. So as a young airman, I got a job, I took care of it, executed it. I knew what the outcome was going to be because I did it. I have operated like that for a long time. Then I became a first sergeant. I did a lot of that, right? So for sergeant, you're taking care of a lot of the things in that office. Up until this last year, where I did have assistant first sergeant, who's Nicole Robinson's husband. It was hard for me to let go and allow others to be a part of the things that I was doing. And so for me, that trust, that trust was a problem, not in trusting in others, but in trusting in myself, that when I let others help and when I include others, that they will help me bring things along as well. So that's always been a challenge for me. I think it's gotten better over the years as I, became a section chief and then became a first sergeant, and even more now as a senior enlisted leader, where I'm putting more back to our airmen and our NCOs to start helping me make decisions in things versus being the one to make the decisions by myself.
Okay, that's awesome. JB, what about you? What kind of weaknesses or challenges that do you have leading as a family?
Risk adverse. I think leading as a family, I make very risk adverse decisions because I'm so concerned how the family will view the decision. When I really should be trusting that they want the best for me, go for it, because that's the action that I always receive is no, you do this, you do that, it's great, you do this, you do that. So as a leading as a family, I think that's one of the things that is a weakness for me is not giving them the credit of the support that they constantly provide me. And I don't think I give them enough credit for that, or I concern myself with how they will judge me. As far as outside the family and work, again, I think I've alluded to it a little bit earlier. Like I'm a very emotional person, which tends to be a little bit more reactive. And when emotions go up, logic goes down. And some of my worst decisions I've made in my career have been emotionally based decisions.
Fair. Okay, so Sherry, we talked about weakness. What kind of strength do you think you bring to leading as a family?
So if I'm being honest, I think it's just emotional intelligence. Like I truly genuinely care about people and people's success, and allowing them to see their failures can help them improve in life. That's what pushed me to become a first sergeant. That's what pushes me every day to get up and take care of my family. I genuinely care about everyone, and I'm genuinely concerned about where everyone's careers are going, how their family dynamics are, and what I can do to support and help.
And JB, what about you? Strengths as leading as part of a family team?
Communication. I am a huge supporter of communication, all forms of communication, whether or not it's storytelling, whether or not it's just, if you can attach emotion to a lesson or to something, like people will remember it forever. So I think communicating and being able to articulate myself when I can remain logical, I think is probably one of my greatest strengths.
Fair. I'll never forget watching you stand on a stool after pulling out a dry erase board full of Post-its.
That was good.
That was pretty awesome. Okay, so all right. So next question, book recommendation. Sherry, over to you. What book would you recommend? Either because of something that's interesting to you, or tied to leadership, or tied to family. What kind of book would you recommend?
The 5 Love Languages. So I actually made Jason read this book, and I made him swear that when I was done, he would read it. So there is another book they came out with about 5 love languages in the workplace or something like that. But really, the basis of the book is that the way you show love is not the same way that people receive. Or the way that you receive is not the same way you should give love. And so, for example, if you're not familiar, Jason's love language is words of affirmation. And for me, mine is acts of service. And so if we're not speaking in each other's preferred love languages, then the relationship is going to have a lot of tension and conflict. And you can apply the same thing in the work environment. When you are not speaking to someone in the way that they receive information or the way they want to be treated, it's going to, erode trust and things of that nature. So the 5 love languages, while it's primarily focused on marriage, you can or relationships, you can apply that to any relationship that you have.
Yeah, that's awesome. JB, over to you.
Yeah, so I'm actually looking at 3 books right now that one of them I've gone back to, and the first one would be human-centered design thinking. So I'm kind of delving down that path a little bit. Anything that has human-centered and then it's design thinking, I think, is going to be imperative as we move forward, not only as a military but also as a society. I'm also rereading the book called "What Color Is Your Parachute?" And it comes out every year. They revise it every year. And one of the things that it's helping me do is to kind of determine my passion and purpose, so I can make this upcoming transition as smoothly as possible. But I could see the value in reading something like that, even if you're just starting out your career. And then the last one that I'm also revisiting is just heart-led leadership, the heart-led leader. I really like that book. I know it's kind of cliche and stuff like that, but it really boils down to, giving a blank, about other people. And I think a lot of our leadership failure and success could be determined by how much you actually just genuinely care about other people. So it just serves as a good reminder to me of where my leadership decisions should be based. And I think sometimes we get a little too caught up here and we forget about, that we may lead airmen and guardians, but they're just called airmen and guardians. They're really human beings.
You got to come.
Awesome. Okay, so this is the part where I turn it over to you, to kind of give us some pearls of wisdom, unstructured perspective. I'll let you choose what order you want to do it or how you want to do it. But the topic today was leading as a family, and so what kind of final nuggets of wisdom would you like to pass to those that were here live to participate or those that will watch the video?
So along the lines with the theme, I would say it's not about a challenge, right? Jason and I do not challenge or we do not compete with each other. We support each other. And so the biggest thing that I can recommend to anyone, especially folks that are, have a family, whether that be with children or with a significant other, is that your dreams should be your dreams together, whether that be your own achievements or his achievements or her achievements or your children's achievements. It should be all together. And as long as you are strategizing, breaking it down, and supporting each other through the process, you don't have to sacrifice one career for the other. You don't have to sacrifice your family for your career. You don't have to sacrifice your career for your family. It'll work itself out so long as you set goals, you strategize, and you be supportive of one another and of your family.
Yeah, almost in the same vein. I guess the one bit of advice I would give is stop allowing outside people to dictate what a successful career looks like. It does not matter. Like we have gotten into this culture of up or out, first time, every time. I need to get a stratification. I need to get a forced distribution statement. I need to get I need. And then we place our value in these things. And then when we don't get them, we feel as if we are not of value. Our value is not rested in those things. And the reason I tie that back in a family is a lot of what you talked about earlier, sir, was we've had to make some tough decisions. We've had to make some choices that luckily for us have worked out, but that's not always the case. So you may have to make a family-based decision that may cost you an opportunity for a promotion, that may cost you that. That's okay, because your value is not rested in that. Stop taking outsiders' perspectives on what a successful career looks like. We get to determine that. And that maybe a successful career is not reaching the top of the organizational ladder, but having a healthy, happy family at home. Because I will take that success over a big paycheck, a big office, or my name on the side of the building any day.
That was awesome. Well, JB, Sherry, thank you guys so much for participating in episode 2. 2 guests for the price of 1. As always, it's a privilege to listen to you both. And JB, you want to talk a little bit about what you're doing here for the last 144 days now, I think is where we're at. If you guys want to talk about where people can find you on social media and how they can still garner insight.
Yeah, so for those that are tuning in and for those that will watch the video, if you do not know, we have made a decision for me to finally hang up my uniform. I hit the button the beginning of last month, August. So one of the things, and sir, I'm gonna be completely honest with you, I may have bit off more than I can chew, but I'm gonna stick with it. One of the things that I got out there and I told is, one of the most valuable, vulnerable, authentic things I can do is probably spend the last 150, 140 some now days, every single day, just dropping a leadership lesson learned. Because there's tons of them and there's tons of experience. And if I keep it all to myself, I'm not serving anyone. So I want to kind of go out with sharing my wins, more importantly, my losses, and just try to help other navigate this very complex issue that is called leadership. So I am out on LinkedIn as me, Jason Barnshaw. I use a pen name for Facebook and all that other stuff, but that's Linwood Gale. Sherry is out on LinkedIn, which I'm trying to get her to start posting a little bit more. And she's also out on Facebook. We don't really dive too deep into social media. It does become very mentally taxing. But we are out there and we are trying to engage in others and open up in dialogue and do stuff like that. And honestly, just share experiences. And I think a lot of the times people look at the posts and all this other stuff and they think it's for them. I'll be completely honest with you. The majority of my posts are for me. There are things that I struggle with. There are things that I'm facing. There are things that, and I'm looking for an outlet because I know I'm not alone in this. And if I can just help one person understand that they're not alone as well, then man, we can cross this bridge together. So I appreciate the plug, sir. It has been a challenge to record every day. We may have to go to long form for some of these, but it has been an experience, and the support and outpouring has probably been more humbling than I could ever imagine. I'm honored at the support and encouragement that I've gotten in the first week of doing this. So thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. And I watch them too. So as you guys know, but thank you guys so much for taking the time. You guys are very, very busy. And so appreciate you taking out a little bit of your Wednesday evening and discussing leadership, which I know matters a lot to both of you, and more importantly, discussing a critical topic of leading in a family. And so thank you both for your service, for your continued service. And JB, we wish you luck as you are pending your transition, and thanks always for being great mentors to everybody that's chiming in and those of us that have been fortunate to work with you. I appreciate everybody coming out tonight. Stay tuned for next month. I'm going to bring in a colleague of mine, a good friend of mine I've known for a long time, who led in the Air Force at the tactical level, was a assistant athletics coach at collegiate level, helped set up adventure races once he retired, and now is a small business owner of a business that was just highly rated in his local town that is bringing out families for a little bit of fun. And so he's led at the tactical level, led at the collegiate level, led in industry, and is now leading in a small business. And so stay tuned, that he'll be our October guest. And so I look forward to having you all join us. Once again, this is Dr. Jim Gumbo Coughlin. I appreciate you guys joining us for a little something extra in Lagniappe Leadership Discussion. Thanks again to Sherry and JB for your time. And stay tuned for more content on leadership.
Thank you, sir.